Yeah.
All right. So I'm Christy Joy. I am a Healing Touch certified practitioner and instructor and teach classes, several with Bonnie Thompson, who is also a Healing Touch certified practitioner, among many other things, and our resident polyvagal theory expert. So we have been talking a lot about the vagus nerve and polyvagal theory and creating a new class together. And we wanted to talk today about the role that that plays in procrastination, because that is something that we hear about from clients a lot and also experience in our own lives and with, people that we know. And it's often misunderstood. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that and hoping we can all gain a little bit better understanding and more compassion for ourselves and others. So,
Yeah.
so we'll kind of do this as a little bit of an interview format, I think. And first, I think if you could just explain what the vagus nerve is and why it's important.
In 2 minutes or less. Sure. Yeah.
That's right. The short version.
Yeah. So the vagus nerve is the largest nerve in the body, and it is, I contend, one of the most important, because it runs from the brainstem down, actually a little bit into the face, facial muscles, and middle ear, by the way, and runs down, touches into the heart, the lungs, and part of it goes down through the diaphragm into our internal organs and touches into almost every organ in the body. And so it's really important. It manages our survival strategies, survival responses, or at least part of it. And it's how it's a good way to think of it too is that it is, now you're sideways.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to make sure that we're both in here, but I don't know. It said it's supposed to be square on Facebook, so
yeah.
I hope everybody can both see us.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. We'll find out.
Yeah.
So it's very much a huge part, if not the biggest part, of the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's really important. There's also, well, I won't go that way.
Well, what's the parasympathetic nervous system?
So the parasympathetic nervous system is what we usually think of when we think of that rest, digest, the calm down, the quiet part of our nervous system, or of our autonomic responses to things. And the kind of opposing thing to that is our sympathetic nervous system, which is the part that runs the fight flight energy and the fight flight response. So there's Deb Dana refers to it as a ladder. There's a hierarchy of the different responses that we have when we feel threatened. And our first response generally is to go into the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight response. If that's not working and we feel very threatened, we'll shift into the vagus nerve managed part, or survival response, which is the shutdown or freeze response. And that's managed by one branch of the nervous system of the vagus nerve that goes down below the diaphragm to our abdominal organs. So
so in nature, in like the animal kingdom, we would see this as one animal is attacking another. It has to assess, can I fight this animal? Do I need to try to run away? Probably it needs to try to run away. It tries. If it can't outrun it, it might play dead, which is not actually playing dead.
Right. It's
the nervous system taking over.
Exactly. And that's an important point, because we function the same way. Our nervous system decides for us what it's going to do. So Stephen Porges, who created the polyvagal theory, which a lot of this information is based on, coined a new term. He called it neuroception. So what that means is that your nervous system is perceiving and taking information from the environment and deciding how it's going to respond. And this never goes through your prefrontal cortex. It never involves conscious choice.
Deciding.
Yeah, we don't decide. Our body decides. And when, like you were describing, that situation, like an animal being caught by a predator and playing dead, they're not consciously doing that. That's not a choice. That's their evolutionary nervous system doing that for them. And it's important that it works that way, because our nervous system can respond way faster than our mind will. And that's one of the reasons that our vagus nerve is hardwired into the brain stem and goes straight into the brain, as opposed to when in the sympathetic nervous system, and our fight flight responses, that's all managed by our spinal nerves. And that takes a little more time to get to the brain and get feedback than something that goes straight to the brain stem. So those responses are unconscious. And the point I was trying to get to was about that piece about self-compassion. And as you start to understand how your body functions and how it responds to things, realizing that this is a response, sometimes the things we're doing are responses that are out of conscious control. And when we understand that, then that piece of self-compassion can come in and say, oh, I didn't have control over how my body responded to that. Because we get into judgment. I should have done this. I should have done something else. All these things that we do that we, bash on ourselves for. And it's not an excuse in the sense of, okay, whatever I do is okay, because it's all out of control. But what I'm looking for is, okay, we usually tend to judge ourselves pretty harshly. And this is a piece where when we understand what's going on, we can be more self-compassionate. And that self-compassion is a doorway into understanding ourselves, and then being able to shift what's creating those responses. Why am I responding like that? Why is my system doing this? And once we can get past the judgment, then we've got an opportunity to accept and be aware of what's going on. And that, for me, in my 14, 15 years of working with clients, that is like the big doorway into healing, is when we can.
Yeah, we don't get very far when we're just telling ourselves that we should be different, or we shouldn't do this, and we shouldn't be this way.
Right.
Yeah.
And we should procrastinate.
Right. So what does that, okay, so let's come around. What does procrastination then have to do with this survival system?
Yeah. So going back to that idea of the shutdown freeze response, and that's managed by the vagus nerve. That is the oldest, speaking evolutionarily, so in how we evolved, that dorsal vagus shutdown freeze response is the oldest and most crude way of managing a threat. And what happens in the body when we go to that state is that everything slows down. So our metabolism slows down, our respiratory rate slows down, our heart rate slows down, blood moves to the core of the body instead of out of the arms and legs, because we're no longer needing to run or fight because we've gotten past that. It's too late. So blood goes to the core of the body. Everything slows down, and the term that Dr. Porges uses with this a lot is immobilization. We immobilize. Everything slows down. We stop. You think of like an opossum playing dead, or a mouse. Mice will do this too. If a cat catches a mouse, and they'll sometimes play with it, mouse will play dead. That's where we use the term freeze. They're frozen. They just stop moving completely. And so immobilization is like the primary experience of being in that shutdown dorsal vagus state. Now, the thing with this is, it's not just full on or full off. We can be in what I like the term functional freeze, where
right. So it's something that happens over time when your response to trauma and stress keeps happening over and over again. So that's how it applies to most humans in modern life. We're not often in a life or death situation, but our biology still works that way. So it responds that way, and our life can be so stressful that you get stuck, and so to speak, or in some level of
right. So there's degrees. Like I said, it's not just switch on, switch off. It's a degree. It's a matter of degree, and it's more complicated than we can explain easily here. They're complex systems, but we can function, and a lot of us do, with a low grade shutdown response happening in our system.
And what does that look like? How would we recognize that in ourselves or somebody else?
Procrastination.
So let's talk more about that too. Like, why procrastination is a response or a result of this?
Yeah, well, it's an immobilization, right? We can't get ourselves going. And part of that, the thing with these survival responses is that they're behavioral. It's not just I feel this way in my body. This is how my body wants to function and move and do something. And so when we're living in this low grade freeze shutdown response, it becomes really difficult to move and to do something. And a lot of this too, though, depends on our experience, our history. So if somebody thinks they might be in a living functional freeze, a lot of the people who are that's kind of their go-to way to deal with stress. A lot of them had traumatic things happen in childhood. And so you think of like an infant. An infant is completely dependent upon their caregiver for survival. And their parts of their nervous system are not fully developed yet. And so when they get stressed, they experience the energy of the sympathetic response and the fight-flight response, but it is totally not viable as a way for them to survive, to do fight or flight, because they can't possibly fight off something. They can't possibly run away, right? So their system goes straight down into that dorsal vagus shutdown response, and that becomes when they've had to kind of deal with stuff that way. That becomes a pattern. That becomes their kind of go-to. When I get stressed, I go into shutdown, because that's what I kind of learned as a child, because things were difficult or it was stressful. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there was big trauma in the family. or the situation growing up. It can be things like medical trauma, like you had to be hospitalized, and separated from your mother, something like that. There's a lot of things that can create that kind of response, for infants. And so, you know, I just, if somebody feels like they're in functional freeze, I don't want them to think, oh no, there must have been some terrible, terrible trauma that happened to me. No.
Right. No, we just do what works.
Yeah.
We
Totally.
do what we feel like we need to in the situation,
Right.
to get through it.
Right. And so, if that happened and we didn't get the ventral vagal, which is the other part of the vagus that we talk about, which is the social engagement and connect with other people and learn how to do that. If we didn't get that so much, then we tend toward, our response goes straight on down to shutdown. And so behaviorally, procrastination is common for people who tend towards shutdown. And
how I see it manifesting is when people, like, they know what they need to do, but they just can't seem to do it. It's like it's right there. They know either this has to be done or this thing would make them feel better, but there's just something, it's like, it's that immobilization. They just can't move.
Right.
They can't take the step to do it. And there can be a lot of judgment of yourself when you're in that place. Like, God, why can't I just do it? Like, it's like so easy. Just get up and do it. And it's not so easy because it's your biology is doing something to your system.
Right. And usually it's because there's often, I should say, procrastination because the task at hand feels unpleasant in some way. And so that becomes this huge hurdle, because none of us like to feel not pleasant things, so that's part of it, but it is certainly not all of it. And so we tend to then go do those things that make us feel better, so go watch cat videos on Facebook, that feels better. I'll do that instead. And so again, it's a behavioral thing in the sense of, okay, this feels good and this doesn't. And yet, some of us can get past that, and some of us, man, it's like this huge wall to doing that. And I think it also comes back to safety. So I know for myself, making phone calls is always really stressful. And I tend to put that off because it's scary on some level for me. And I think part of that is can be explained by the vagus again, because I can't see that other person's face. And so it's harder for me to connect with the other person because I can't see their face and then get information back from that. That's a huge neuroception thing. Being able to see that other person's face, and particularly our nervous system is watching for what's happening on the upper half of their face and what's going on with the muscles around their eyes. And it could be super, super, super tiny movements, and we won't necessarily consciously perceive that, but our nervous system will perceive what's happening with that other person.
Trying to determine if that person is safe at the situation.
Exactly. That's how our body wants to do it, is to be able to see that and see what's going on. So for me, being on the phone, that completely eliminates that whole safety mechanism. And then again, with the vagus nerve, it becomes harder when you're in a stress state to hear human voice and to understand it and comprehend it. Because in the middle ear, there's a little muscle that will adjust the range of sound that you can hear to, if you're feeling threatened, it'll shift it to low tones and very high tones, which are typically sounds that feel like danger to us. So we're paying more attention to those sounds and less attention to that mid-range where the human voice is. So if I'm stressed and I need to talk to somebody on the phone, it gets really hard because I can't see them. I may not be able to hear what they're saying quite so well. And so I understand better why it's hard for me to make phone calls.
Yeah.
And so, of course I procrastinate that. That feels scary because my system's like, I can't really see what's going on and I'm not sure, what the response is. But consciously, obviously, this person on the phone is not going to physically hurt me,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
But it doesn't matter what my brain, what my head knows. It's what my body
Right. And
thinks.
that's where this understanding is so helpful, because you're not going to reason your way out of it. Like you said, this person's not going to hurt me.
Right.
But there's a biological process happening that's beyond your conscious control. However, if we can consciously understand what's happening and why it's happening, that gives us some room.
Right.
That gives us that self-compassion.
Right.
And then what can somebody do then if they're struggling with procrastination? Because when people struggle with procrastination, they know that it doesn't work to just force themselves to do it. That's almost impossible.
Right. And don't go taking time management courses, because it's not a time management issue. I mean, maybe you should, but
maybe.
But
Yeah.
in the moment, that's we know we're supposed to be doing this other thing. It's not because we don't know how to manage time. It's because we're stuck. And so for me, I would say, are there things that you can do to bring some more safety into the system? So a huge part of this is our nervous system wants us to pay attention to our body, and it wants to talk to us and tell us how it's feeling. And if we're feeling anxious, we're energetically, we're up here, we're in our head, and we're not paying attention to our body, and that kind of freaks out the system. And so doing things that help you get grounded and get in your body are going to be helpful, because that brings down the stress in the system. And then if you can find, sometimes it helps to break it down into the tiniest little piece. So is there one little thing that you can do? Because that may feel less threatening than like a big project that you're working on. So a big project can feel kind of threatening, because you start imagining all of the things, and we can use our head. Yeah, we can use our head to freak out our body, to freak out our nervous system.
Yeah.
We start imagining these things. And that's kind of future worry. So if you can get present, which, getting in your body and aware of your body is like, that's being present, is being present to your body. Getting present with your body and putting aside the big thing and looking for just the tiny thing. What is the littlest thing I can do right now? Because
one time.
Yeah, and because once we get started, and that comes back to that immobilization thing. We're mobilized. Once we get started, we want to start bringing some mobilization into the system. Consciously start to mobilize in some way. So, if we can pick one little thing that we can do, or we talked about this the other day, and you mentioned the idea of, just get up and move. And so shifting what we're doing to a more mobile, movement-based activity, even if it's not related to what we're trying to get to, will help bring more of that sympathetic mobilization energy into our system. And once we've got that going, it's easier to step into doing something that we want to do.
Yeah. So I have a friend that struggles with this. Definitely, I can observe that she's in the freeze state a lot and has a big problem with procrastination. And like you were saying, things look huge. Like when she thinks of the thing she has to do, it's overwhelming. So a couple of things I've seen that really help her, it's going for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so the one little thing that the one little thing you do is put your shoes on.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the next thing. You just put your shoes on. And then once your shoes are on, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to walk outside, you know? And so it's just one thing at a time. And that's like that first step is the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you do it, and then like, okay, well, then the next one's not so hard. And then the next one's not so hard.
Right.
And the advantage I feel like of that movement, either dancing or being outside or just, you know, shaking your body, something. Is it's the opposite of that immobilization, right? It's like it's moving and it's getting you in your body and getting you more present and out of your head that's completely overwhelmed with whatever the thing is that's looming, you know, and also just doing one thing. It's like, just say you have to clean a room, just empty the trash can. That's it. That's all you're going to do is empty the trash can. And then maybe you'll do something else after that, but, you know, maybe not.
Yep.
But
yep.
Anyway, I've seen those two things work really well. Oh, and then I noticed when I go for a walk with her that once she starts walking, she becomes so much more present, and she see, oh, look how pretty the sky is. And, oh, I didn't notice that house over there. You know, it's really amazing to watch.
Yeah. Totally.
That's okay. I've got banging out.
I know.
Hear the
yeah, a little bit. Not too bad. Not too bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like right outside this window.
Yeah, and it's kind of a it's the opposite of a vicious cycle. It's actually once you start moving, like your example with your friend.
Momentum.
Yeah, and going outside and walking is a great way to get present, to get in your body, and to pay attention to what's going on around you, because that's something that we lose when we're in shutdown. An extreme shutdown is things like dissociation, like being totally checked out of your body. Another extreme of that is, or not necessarily extreme of that, but a manifestation of that is depression. Because depression is an immobilized state. So, you know, those are all, and as we talk about these, I'm hoping what people are getting from this is they're starting to get little ahas. It's like, oh, now I understand, you know, what's going on there. Or, you know, oh, I do that. So I'm hoping that people are seeing a little bit of themselves in this and connecting with that, and getting some, you know, some ideas about what they could do. And sometimes it helps to connect with another person, because one of the ways that we humans have evolved in order to survive is to connect with other people. And the beauty of things like this Facebook Live, I can see your face, and you know, we can get on Zoom or other things. We can see people face to face, and that's something that our nervous system craves, is being able to see and connect with another person. And since we can't do that so much now in person, we can at least do that using the technology that we have. And I think that's the huge lifesaver for us if we're using it, because our system, when we're interacting and connecting with another person face to face, and they're compassionate, sympathetic, empathetic witness for us, that helps move us out of these other states and shift back towards that calm, relaxed, I feel safe state, which is that state that's managed by that ventral vagus, which manages heart and lungs and our face, our smile,
which is the other part of right now with the pandemic is everybody's wearing masks,
Right.
and
Yeah.
we can still see the eyes. And I know when I go out, I really try to smile with my
Yeah.
eyes so
Yeah.
people can see.
Right. And that's great. Yeah, because because we can see people's eyes and we can respond, okay, they're safe, but we're not being able to give back to them that smile that
Yes.
that helps with that interchange. So getting on on a computer and connecting with people this way really is a pretty good substitute for the face-to-face that we can't do so much.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to help shift your system out
Move
of
out of that
those
shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, movement, getting up, stretching, shaking, dancing, walking, anything to get you in your body and getting some
Moving,
movement. So
mobilize.
mobilization.
Yeah.
So even if it doesn't have to do with the thing that you're procrastinating,
Right.
it's going to shift your energy, it's going to shift your nervous system.
Yeah.
And then picking one small thing, think of
Right.
it as just the thing right in front of you, and have compassion.
Yep.
Have compassion for yourself. Connect with people.
Yep.
However you're able to.